Hello and welcome here to my video about a really old camera. The Rolleicord IIc I would like to introduce you in detail. Thank you for your interest and your time. If you like the video, please leave a like. You can find more information about analog, hybrid and digital photography on my website, apertureonepointfour.com. Enjoy the video. Tips and tricks for loading a 120 roll film into a Rolleicord. Here Model 2C. I used a Rolleicord IIc pan film here, that had already passed its expiration date since 1986. Press the small button on the front of the camera, and the back panel will open. Pull out the knob, and lock it by turning it slightly. Now you can insert the film spool more easily. Once you've inserted the film spool, use the button from before and snap it into the film spool. Place the tab of the film in the recess of the upper empty film spool. Advance the film, so that the film start mark is aligned exactly as shown on the video. Then close the camera back. Mark the film transport button and the frame counter reset button. Turn the film transport knob 6.5 times. Press the large black button, and push the small silver button down slightly. The frame counter jumps to 1. Ready. The aperture can be selected continuously from 3.5 to 22. The larger the number, the wider the aperture is closed, and thus also the range that we perceive as being correctly focused on an image. This is called depth of field. At aperture 3.5, the depth of field is shallower than at aperture 11, as an example. In addition, at close range, the depth of field is even shallower than in long-distance shots. When you focus with the camera, you will see the aperture values 3.5, 8 and 16 engraved above the meter display. After you have focused, you can determine which area in the photo is still perceived as correctly focused and in focus. This is the area on the distance scale, that is between the aperture values 8 or 16, or, in the case of aperture 3.5, between the two markings. The shutter is loaded by turning the silver lever clockwise, as far as it will go. To release the shutter, simply push it counterclockwise. You will hear the shutter sound. The shutter speed is set on a lever opposite the aperture lever, in the range from 1 second to 300th of a second. For long exposures, the settings B and T are also available. After the release, you have to transport the film further. You press the small lever on the viewfinder down, and the waist lever finder pops open. Now you have a direct view of the focusing screen. You can use the built-in magnifying glass to focus more precisely, or you can work with the depth of field. I explained this in the video Rolleicord IIc, shutter speed, aperture, depth of field. The matte screen image is displayed laterally reversed. The pentaprism is missing here, as you might know it from a single lens reflex camera. A pentaprism ensures a laterally correct image. With the function shown here, you don't have to look into the camera from above, but you can look straight through the viewfinder, as would be usual with a 35mm camera. As you can see, the camera does not have the familiar tripod thread size that you know from your analog 35mm camera, whether analog or digital. Therefore, I use a reduction screw from 3/8 to 1/4 inch UNC thread to 3/8 inch UNC thread, so that I can continue to use my tripod quick couplers. Film transport is also quite simple. After the exposure, press the large button on the film transport knob. Then turn this knob until it resists, which advances the film to the next frame. A lens hood shields the lens from extraneous light, and can thus increase contrast. In a 2-lens camera, only the photographing lens is equipped with a lens hood, not the lens that is responsible for image control, the so-called viewfinder lens. The lens hood is attached via a bayonet connection. There is a viewing window on the bottom of the camera. Please leave this closed, so that no light can damage the film. It was used to control the start position of the film. Please follow my advice in the video, Inserting Film, in my series about the Rolleicord IIc. A cable release is used, whenever longer shutter speeds are to be or must be used, in conjunction with a solid base for your camera, preferably with a tripod. With this camera, I recommend 1/100th of a second as the longest shutter speed for freehand shots without a flash unit, perhaps 1/50th of a second in exceptional cases. The cable release is simply screwed into the socket. The shutter is clamped. Then you can activate the cable release. The shutter opens and closes. For long-term exposures, use the B setting. The shutter remains open as long as you press the shutter release button. When using the B setting, the shutter must not be cocked. Your Rolleicord IIc does not have a built-in light meter, nor any automatic exposure control. On the back of the camera there is a table that shows estimated values of an aperture and shutter speed combination. Please understand this is a rough guide only. For correct exposure metering, please use a light meter. Older selenium exposure meters work without a battery, but the selenium cells wear out over the years. Therefore, check if your selenium exposure meter, here the Anastigmat, delivers a correct result. I myself use the Gaussian Multi-6, or the small Hideko lime in everyday photography. Instead of using a handheld exposure meter, you can of course also determine the exposure values with a camera that has a built-in exposure meter. Thank you for your interest and time. If you liked the video, please leave a like. More information about analog, hybrid and digital photography can be found on my website, apertureonepointfour.com. See you next time.